Hey everybody, before we start the show, just a quick note from our partner Sharkscope.com. Do you play online poker at one or more sites? Want to find out what your real profit and ROI numbers are? Once you register, Sharkscope gives you up to 10 free searches a day. So go ahead, head on over to Sharkscope.com and put your screen name in the player statistics section. If you've opted in, all your stats will appear. If you haven't, you'll get a snapshot of your stats. Looking to combine all your screen names into a group and see where you really stand? For as little as $10 a month, you can access these advanced features. Sharkscope, the best for over 10 years. Track your statistics, avoid the sharks, and find easier tournaments at Sharkscope.com. Welcome, everybody, to the 2+2 Pokercast presented by RunItOnce.com. Pokercast 441, December 6th, 2016. Coming at you from my humble abode. And across the desk from me, Mr. Roscoe P. Coltrane.
Hi. Nice to be on your show again.
And from not Hong Kong, but Thailand, Terrence Chan.
Hello. I'm here at my sick house.
You're
sick not house. A sick house. Not quite a sick house in Thailand. More like a sick studio apartment hotel. But I'm still happy
Mongolian
to be.
beef?
The old school reference to the sick house in Thailand ad from Deuces Cracked?
I think it was Poker Road.
No, it was Deuces
Mongolian
Cracked.
beef?
No.
It was DeucesCrack.com, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The sick house in Thailand.
Somebody out there will remember, but I remember that commercial tilted the shit out of listeners. Like, they hated it.
It polarized. Everybody either loved it or hated it.
I don't know that many people loved it.
Okay.
but it was a great running joke. Right, like Ross, do you know this even? Like,
I've heard it. Well, I remember
it
from either what was the first poker news podcast? The Circuit and the
Circuit.
And I remember references from those shows.
And we've run it in the best of, the anniversaries, the best of. It's certainly made its appearance a few times. We'll have to dig that one out maybe one day.
By the way, if you just type, so I'm in incognito right now, if you just type the words sick house in Thailand, the first three results are all poker forums.
Are they really?
Yeah. One of them is like a Google Plus account for some rakeback site. The second one is 2+2, and like obviously there's multiple references to sick house in Thailand. And then the third one I think is it's a Tapatalk of some other poker forum. It might just be mirroring.
Tapatalk is the mobile version of 2+2.
Well, no, it's
Isn't
a
it?
mobile version.
It's a mobile version.
Tapatalk is an app, and you can access 2+2.
Right.
Actually, if you put in "sick house in Thailand" using quotes, which I guess is the more important thing.
This is a Google lesson. This is a lesson on how to Google by T. Chan.
Yeah, exactly. It's good to know I know how to do one thing in this world. First result, the Micros Facebook page.
Oh, good.
How good is that?
That is good.
So the Micro. I mean, if anybody sort of is the. What's the word I'm looking for? But if anybody gets all the in-jokes of the poker world, it's probably the guys who wrote the Micros, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of... some of the videos they did were awesome.
Yeah, if you use if you do quote sick house in Thailand, the entire first page is just poker results in some way or another. So it's definitely a meme that permeated the poker atmosphere thanks to that wonderful, wonderful commercial.
And if you're new, if you haven't been around for a long time, go Google the Micros poker videos, maybe on YouTube if you can find them. Some fantastic stuff in there. You'll enjoy yourself for half an hour or so. Terrence, give us a quick rundown. What's going on in your world? Is this a little vacay from Hong Kong?
Got a new belt?
Yeah, I did get a new belt. Not the cool MMA kind, that championship, but I did get promoted to purple belt in jiu-jitsu. Thank you for that.
Purple belt?
Yeah. Purple belt is probably like the equivalent of your college degree, I think.
Okay.
It's sort of like
good.
intermediate level. You're not like a PhD of the thing that you do, but you're pretty. You know what you're talking about in the general realm. So
it's like a political science degree. You can't really use it for anything.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I do use it more regularly than I use my actual college diploma. I mean, I'm pretty like anti-education, but I mean, nobody ever kicked the shit out of me for not having a business degree. So
Nice. It's a little vacation, training. What's going on
a little
in town?
vacation. I love Thailand. So I mean, I've tried to describe the sort of community that I live in right now, but it's basically a fitness / MMA retreat. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere in Thailand. They just took a mile-long road and a couple of gyms propped up on it, and then after those gyms got popular, all the surrounding area just got populated and blew up into this whole business, and everything along this sort of mile-and-a-half street community is basically like massage places. It's like organic food cafes.
Yeah, I was going to say there's no like McDonald's and burger places because it's catering to.
There are a couple like pizza places because I think. Well, the thing is, like, there's probably like 200 restaurants in this like mile-and-a-half stretch, and then so some of them have to cater for like cheat days or when you just can't stand it anymore and you've got to go off, and so and they've got other things that people are into too, like things that you do on vacation. Hey, who we got? We got a visitor.
That's my dog. The wife and my dog Winston. He's a big husky shepherd cross. My wife and daughter have just arrived back home, and he makes a lot of noise.
He gets excited.
He gets very excited. Sorry that my dog interrupted.
No,
you.
no, that's good. But it's all good. I like when we have unexpected guests on the show.
Right.
The first one. But yeah, the whole sort of thing caters to it. Like there's even things that you wouldn't necessarily think of offhand, like tattoo parlors.
Right.
Because when you're on vacation, or you're just like a meathead fighter, of course, what you need is tattoo parlors. And then, of course, massage places, ice bath places, sauna, like, there's weight rooms. Like every business along here is just sort of set up so that, you can come here and just like train and recover and all that. I actually met an old friend, I don't technically think he's a coworker because we didn't work for Stars at the same time, but Luke Lichtenstein, who I think you might know, worked EPT and APPT and worked for PokerStars for 7 or 8 years. I ran into him last night. Like he's just here getting himself in shape, as he puts it, undoing the damage that he's been doing, just traveling around for 8 years last 8 months, drinking and partying and all that. So this is a great place to come and just like, if you have no responsibilities and you just your priority one is just be in really good shape and physically and want to lose some weight, or whether you want to be a badass, like this is the place to be.
Wow,
that sounds like a place I need to go. Lose a bunch of weight, but Terrence will break me in half by the time I leave there after a week. But okay, so cool.
I don't have to do anything. You can do everything at your own pace. Like that's the thing. You go to these gyms and you can sign up, and if you're broken on this day and you just can't train, then you don't train today and you just do some recovery and you do some massage. The next day you go back in and hit the gym hard.
So one of my favorite episodes of Seinfeld of all time, and I don't know if you've seen this one, but Kramer is doing karate. And he goes to a dojo, and he's talking about how he goes to sparring and all that, and they finally follow him to the
he's beating up the 10-year-olds,
dojo.
Right?
He's fighting 9 and 10-year-olds, which is exactly about my level.
This place sounds like a surfer village for fighters.
Yeah, I think that's the idea. I don't know what a surfer village is like, but like the funny, but yeah, the amenities are all sort of designed for people to get in shape.
There you go. You have a confession, so to speak.
I do have a confession, and the confession is, well, it's more like it's a confession / public service announcement. The confession is I'm a moron. Okay, and I'll sort of I'll get into the story. That's a fairly appropriate. So I get this email. When you got an account on a website, and then you like go in and you change your email address, or you change in your home address or your phone number, or whatever, like it sends you an email back that says like
somebody has
Adam, somebody has changed your information or whatever.
Sure.
Right? And they basically do that just so it's like, if you're like, oh wait, I didn't change my information, that something's up, and you can go in and do that, right? I think if you change your PokerStars password, that'll happen. You'll get an automated email. So I get an email yesterday from an account that I know I did not log in and change anything.
Okay.
So
can we say what it is?
This is bad. Sure, it's just like a frequent flyer program.
Okay.
It's not. It doesn't matter, right? Like, so I log in, and I don't click on the link because that's always dangerous. You don't click on the link. You go to the actual website, and then I log in and my password doesn't work. I'm like, that's bad.
Do we have a lot of miles in this account?
I have a lot, but it's not like an obscene lot. I mean, it's something like the cash value. I don't know what the cash value in there, but I'm going to say like it's over 300, but it's probably less than 1,000.
Okay. But what can they do
So
with
it's not-
miles? It's not like they can do anything really. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, of course, you can transfer miles to you can transfer miles to friends.
Oh, sure, but
So,
you can
yeah, so
reverse
you
that pretty easily.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, I don't think the guy's going in there and buying like 500 coasters or
Right.
something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he is. But yeah, I log it, and so then I'm like, okay, well now I have to go do the whole password recovery thing, right? So it does the thing where it asks you whatever your mother's maiden name or your city of birth or whatever nonsense thing, and then we're like, okay, put in your email address, and we'll send you a link to your email, and you click on the email, and then that's how you get your password back, right? Now
Sure.
That's how these things work. But the problem was that when I put in my email address, all of a sudden they say, no, that's not the wrong email address, and they do that thing where it's like the first letter of the email address and the last letter of the email address
Yep.
and a bunch of stars in between, and I'm like, that's not my email address.
Ooh.
So they've gone in and they changed that too. And they've gone in and changed my recovery phone number, so like I can't call in.
This is an
Basically,
active
I have
hack.
no way to verify that this is a straight up I've been hacked. And like I look and just like, geez, how did this happen? Like I was sloppy. And then I realized that the account, like this account that I'd set up, it's one of the really old ones that I have. Like it's like 8 or 9 years old, and I set it up a long time ago. And I used and I know other people do this, and
Yep.
I should know better. But it's one of those passwords where I reuse the password on a bunch of different websites. Like
Right.
I used to do this in the past, right? So I think a lot of people do this. They think that like, oh, this isn't really like a big deal. I'll just use the same password. Like it's not a stupid password. Like the password isn't Terrence, and it's not like my mom's name, and it's not like something really stupid. It's not poker.
password.
Yeah, the password itself is not stupid. It's just that I've used it on different sites before, right?
Okay.
So the thing is, if you've used the password on 30 different sites and one of those sites gets compromised, now basically all 30 of those sites are compromised, right? Like you've got an issue. And I think a lot of and the warning so I want to give people is people think like, well, yeah, I mean, I use one good password for like, the dangerous stuff like the online banking or stuff, even like air miles or whatever. And then, but if I go to like buy a t-shirt or sign up for a newsletter, I'll just use like the password I don't give a shit about. And the problem with that is that, when you do that, so suppose, like you use some password, you have some low security password, that, you might buy like a t-shirt from, and then another one where you sign up for a forum where you talk about cars or whatever. And you might not think about, I don't care if somebody steals my password for my forum that I break into cars with, and that's true, because what are they going to do? Post on the forum and talk about how a BMW is better than a Porsche? Like, who gives a shit, right? But the problem is, like, if they also have the access to that t-shirt buying site, well, now you used a credit card on that site,
Yep.
and that might have it has might have your home address, and it will have your email. And then so if there's any way to get into your email, now they have access to that. So basically, and a lot of these sites, they make you go through some sort of security question too. Like what's the name of your dog, or what's your mother's maiden name, or what was the first car you ever bought. So now they're able to pick up all that information too. So I was an idiot. I used this was like 10 years ago, before I knew about good password management. So I mean, I'm going to give myself like a partial pass. But still, I should have realized that I was using this password on way too many different sites, and it finally came back and bit me in the ass. So basically, the entire day, like the last like 12 hours, has basically been me going around to all the different websites that I can think of and changing my default password and just changing it to like a random string of garbage characters.
And then you keep it
like,
in a password lock on your laptop?
Yeah. So the best thing, I mean, you can do a number of things. I mean, I guess the safest real thing is to like have a notebook, like physically. That's kind of a pain in the ass. But you can use a lot of different password managers. If you just Google password managers reviews, there's like 15 of them. I think the most popular one might be like 1Password, or there's also LastPass, but there's also like RoboForm and Password Depot, and a lot of these ones. Sticky Password is one that like the experts like. If you do that, then you use some password management software. Then that's probably a better thing to do than using the same.
This reminds me of our old benevolent co-host, Mr. Mike Johnson. I don't know if you remember this story, T, but early in his poker career at Party Poker, he's in the laser correction industry, so his screen name at Party Poker is Laser Guy 2020.
Right.
So he plays in a $50 tournament and he banks it and ends up winning, I don't know, $7,000 or some large amount of money for a $50 tournament. And
Wait, Mike Johnson won a poker tournament?
Yeah. And in fact, actually, I think he came like second, and it got some big
that
prize.
seems fun.
So
Mike doesn't play enough hands to win win first place.
So MJ decides. He wins the tournament, and then somebody notices that he's playing some really high big game, like 100, 200 or something, and losing all his money, and calls him, and he's like, "I'm not playing poker right now. What are you talking about?" And so MJ decides, or he emails them, says, "Hey, you need to stop. Somebody's joyriding my account." Turned out his password on his account, Laser Guy 2020, was laser.
Yeah, that's not a great password.
It's not.
I mean, I've mentioned this before, but I used to work at PokerStars. I've dealt with more than one famous, well-known poker player who had a similarly poor password and a very large balance. So, yeah, I mean, take care out there. But that's the thing. Like, most people, I think, are smart enough and cognizant enough to like protect the stuff that they realize is super important. So online banking, poker accounts, anything, Amazon or whatever, things where you're buying and selling things. But the thing is that, like, using the same password or using really obvious passwords in places where you don't expect it to be a big deal, like you sign up for some newsletter or you sign up for some forum where you talk about bullshit, it's still a big deal not to reuse those passwords, because there's always the tendency, like, if they get one, they can use that one to get to the next one. And so yeah, don't be like passwords. Me. Be smart.
Indeed. All right, let's get into some in case you missed it.
How did he miss the open goal? 6 by 4, and he comes up 0. Oh no! Oh yes, he missed it.
He's missed it. How on earth did he miss that?
In case you missed it, 10 attorney generals, including the Attorney General of Nevada, have written a letter to Mike Pence, of course, the vice president, the vice president-elect, I guess you would call it, asking him to continue with the legislation to restore the Wire Act. This is stuff that's been going on for a while. The Restore the Wire Act crowd, the generally conservative right-wing faction in the U.S., have been trying to put more beef behind the Wire Act, because it doesn't right now affect online gaming. It affects telephone. It was originally designed to stop people from sports betting over the phone and setting up a shop in the Bahamas and having a phone line to Americans to be able to bet sports.
Offshore gambling websites.
Yes. And it's never really stood up against online or internet gaming, because it's not technically over a phone line, but there's been several moves to restore the Wire Act and make it stronger to include online gaming. And these attorney generals have written a letter to Mike Pence, who's very anti-online gaming, but it's
anti-fun.
It's interesting because, of course, Trump comes from the casino business, and so you would think he has a better understanding on some level of how this is going to affect not just online gaming, but land-based gaming. And Sheldon Adelson, who's clearly behind this. I mean, Terrence, we have the Attorney General of Nevada, where online gaming is legal, regulated and legal in Nevada. The Attorney General of the state is saying, I don't want this in my state anymore. Yeah,
that's by far the most, disappointing and hypocritical when everybody was saying that this is what we actually need, is regulated gaming, including the gaming websites themselves, pretty much, other than the ones that are operating outside. This is it's a level of absurdity. And if there's one thing that we've learned through all this process, is how little the elected officials know about not just online gaming, but basically everything that they legislate about. It's enough to make you very cynical.
It's bad. Yeah, there was a lot of talk during the election about saving jobs. I guess, if they one fell swoop, they could eliminate many jobs in that industry in 3 different states. So Hopefully that does not happen. I think it's got a long way to go. They've tried with the Restore the Wire Act several times, Terrence, and it really hasn't happened. So I'm not sure how much danger we are in at this point. But
I have a very good brain, and I've said a lot of things.
Indeed.
Yeah, luckily it hasn't worked so far, but I mean it's always a concern, and of course, like, the major concern is you just legislate out all of the online gambling with all the online poker sites that are willing to follow the rules, and then all the ones who are unwilling to follow the rules now dominate the market, and it's a terrible response, and we know this, but we've discussed this on the show. It's a recurring theme of the show for about the last 9 years or so, since UIGA, basically. So.
All right, moving on. In case you missed it, speaking of Donald Trump, he has blocked his biggest supporter in Nevada, Mr. Doyle Brunson, on Twitter. Did you see this, Terrence? After trumpeting for Trump for many months, Doyle, of course, the right-wing old coot that he is, now is blocked by Trump for some reason. I don't know if there's like an algorithm that Trump has that he runs to block. Imagine how many people Trump would have to block.
Oh man!
If he's picking on Doyle Brunson to block, like, first of all, how bad's the algorithm that figured out to block Trump? Second of all, how many people is this guy blocking?
Well, I mean, it's clearly not him, because he doesn't have fucking time to do all that. So it's got to be like some social media person who's hired. Like, my guess is that Doyle has just been involved in so many anti-Trump conversations. Like, he's in there debating with everybody, even though he's very obviously pro-Trump. Yeah, I mean, it's just Trump can't even hire a qualified social media person. Like, God, much less does the actual people who are going to be making important decisions. That's the really discouraging thing, because, like you say, like, Doyle is so pro-Trump that if Trump can make Trump social media manager can make the huge mistake of blocking somebody who's that big of a supporter, like, that's really terrible. How are they're going to screw up things that are actually important?
Well, the funny thing is, and one of the funniest things I've seen in a long time happened this week. I don't know if you watch, you're halfway around the world, Terrence, so you probably didn't see this, but on Saturday Night Live, they've been doing this Trump impersonation for a long time, and it's spot on. It's really good. And last week they opened the show. It was a cold open with Trump retweeting some 18-year-old kid who's in his classroom, because Trump was retweeting like kids last week for their political views, so in the skit he retweets this kid, and then it's funny, whatever, they open the show.
They talk about how he can't stay off Twitter.
He can't stay off Twitter.
How he can't stay out of Twitter beefs. It's Alec Baldwin.
It's Alec Baldwin doing it, and it's a fantastic impression. So, the person sitting there saying, "Mr. Trump, I've got this security briefing on Syria to do," and he's like, "Oh, hang on a second, I got to retweet somebody." But so it's funny. Whatever. 45 minutes into the show, Trump is watching it. He says, "I tried to watch Saturday Night Live again. Alec Baldwin's impression is terrible. Sad!" exclamation mark. And it's Trump tweeting about the fact that he can't stay off Twitter. It was so great, and it's one of those classic moments.
Yeah. He doesn't see he doesn't really understand irony.
Oh, the ironing. Moving on. In case you missed it, the GPL, the Global Poker League Season 1 championship event took place this week in Vegas. The two teams, it came down to the Montreal Nationals versus the Berlin Bears to see who would win the championship and the $100,000 first place prize. And the good Canadian kids that they are, the Montreal Nationals ended up taking it down. A pretty sick final. Montreal, so it's a best of 11, first of all, which I thought was interesting. I guess you want to have as many people involved in the final as you can. Montreal they built a 5-3 lead in the best of 11, so first to 6. And Sorel Mitzi won 2 matches against Pascal Lefrancois and Mike McDonald, Timex, to tie the final at 5. But Pascal ended up winning it for the Nationals by beating Brian Rast in the final match. And I watched some of it. It was pretty interesting. They were in the cube.
You always like finals of stuff.
Yeah, it's the final. If you're going to watch one thing, you're going to watch the final. Plus, they had the cube out.
Yeah.
And Timex and Sorel were going at it, and there was some pretty good verbal banter. I actually really enjoyed the bit that I did watch.
Yeah.
Well, that's good because I saw a lot of, sort of sarcastic tweeting, about like, oh, who cares about this stuff? But more I saw more positivity, especially I think from the participants. I think the participants really enjoyed their experience. We should have one of them on, to talk about it a little bit, to talk about being in the queue. But it seems like the participants very much enjoyed it. Whether it was a good spectator sport seemed to be somewhat up for debate, but if you're saying it's interesting, then that's great.
It was
the best thing I saw was Alan Kessler complaining on Facebook about the structure. It's like,
he's a parody.
You don't get it, right? Like you're complaining about the structure of like something that's essentially a game show at this point,
right? Right.
I watched it too, and it was I enjoyed it as well. I think that the two final teams had a large side wager involved.
Oh, I can imagine.
I believe that the Nationals laid 1.22 to 1 against the
Berlin Bears, because the Berlin Bears have Bill Perkins on the team,
so
who's classified as
even though I'm sure he put up most of the money for the
side bet. Yeah, he's getting a decent price. He's up against a pretty tough team. That Montreal Nationals team was pretty crazy.
Yeah, hopefully, I imagine anyway that it wasn't a very big price, because I mean, I think they started with even chip stacks for the finals, and maybe even slightly stronger team with that structure doesn't matter too much. But one thought, sort of, as we go forward on this, it obviously makes a lot of sense for side action to happen on the GPL at this stage, because it's $100,000 for first place, but on a relative basis for the quality of competition that these guys are in, it's relatively small stake stuff and will be for a while. But you sort of wonder, I mean, this whole idea in terms of sportifying poker, one of the most overused cliches in the last little while, but sportifying poker sort of when we talk about sports, we don't, there's so much stigma around actually gambling, right? Like if it would be a pretty big deal if the Warriors and the Cavaliers were making bets on who was going to win the NBA finals. But, because these guys are playing for relatively small stakes, I mean, I'm sure Alex is just going to say, okay, fine. But is there going to be a point where Alex has an issue with people side betting on this, you think?
I wouldn't think so. And what I'll say is, because for the players, it makes a lot of sense, like you said. And here we have a situation where they get to gamble vig-free. They don't have to pay a 10% rake to a tournament, and they're playing against people who probably think they're very good. Each side thinks they're very good, or there's egos in poker. And in fact, this is probably really, really good for the player pool of the GPL if he allows gambling to happen, side betting to happen, right? I mean, more people are going to be interested in playing it. People who might have passed and said, I'll see how this league does. If all of a sudden you get a group of guys together who are, playing for money, I mean, it's literally another way to play a tournament, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It makes total sense. Like, you're raising the effective stakes, and yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point with being able to bring more elite players into this. I just look at just like the optics for us. Obviously, we understand it. We think it's great, but the optics if Alex is shipping this to some sponsor, and some sponsor finds out like, oh, in the finals there was gambling on the outcome, like that seems wrong. And then we've said this before a few times, like Alex doesn't come from this world, and he's also now dealing with people who also don't come from this world. And so I just wondering if it still can, if it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, then I start to wonder whether it'll be an issue. But now, of course, I love side betting as much as everybody else does.
The other way it could be an issue is if that does happen, and people, when they start drafting these teams, and they pick players who are willing to come on and side bet, and they'll maybe leave off a guy who's really, really good, but maybe doesn't have a ton of money, as a back player, let's say.
Or leave off a guy who's really marketable, but like isn't as good at poker, right? So this whole thing was a big thing because Aaron Paul, and we're gonna have celebrities on teams, and it's gonna be exciting. We're gonna mainstream appeal. Like, a lot of teams drafted around not who the best players were, but certain marketability aspects of them, and sort of that was in the spirit of the GPL. It's like, oh, it's not a bunch of like 28-year-old white guys in hoodies. It's there's a lot of diversity, there's a lot of flavor, there's a lot of flair, there's a lot of personality going into this. And so if you have a lot of awareness that there's going to be side action, now you have you're as a manager incentivized just to draft the strongest team of poker players possible, which is not necessarily the same thing as the best GPL team.
A lot of encouraging things looking forward for the GPL into season 2. Season 1 was always going to be a struggle. I mean, they're starting a new league, a new format, a new concept. Of course, we've talked about it. It's going to be difficult. There's going to be bumps in the road, and there certainly was. I don't think anybody will disagree with that, even Alex. But, a bunch of signs, and I think not the least of which is that PokerStars came on late in the season and became a partner where they can, stream the matches on PokerStars TV. They have all the verticals of marketing the GPL. I mean, a huge partnership for the GPL going forward in Season 2. I read an article by Lee Davey on calvinair.com, who's a poker writer, and he brought up some interesting points, and I want to get your thought on this, T. First off, the one that he mentioned is the season too long, and it was 9 months, and that does seem, we talk about baseball seasons, they're 9 months, whatever. We're not talking about baseball. We're talking about something that
Chicago
I think
had a sick record.
I think a lot of people got a little bit more interested in the GPL once the finals came around and reaching the final. But if you're, those dog days of summer, to use a baseball term, of in the middle of that 9-month season, how hard is it to get people interested in?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even realize that it was 9 months, but that makes a lot of sense to me. It's, having a condensed season for something like this, like you want to be able to build some press around it, and if it's just sort of happening all the time, then you lose a lot of that press. The difference, I guess, sort of to be on the other side, to be a little more devil's advocate, is that one of the things that the GPL has going for it is that the participants, like the players in their league, like they're very active on social media. They have a good social media following. So anytime there are GPL regular season or whatever they call it games going on, like there's that presence. But yeah, it might be more interesting to sort of they might want to pick a time in the poker schedule where things are relatively dead. Like there's not a big major somewhere in the world going on. There's not a big online major, most notably, and just kind of pack it into a few weeks where they can get a lot of excitement and a lot of buildup, and it might be harder on the players because they might have to put in more time and play more hours in a more condensed period of time, but it may generate a little bit more media buzz. I mean, that may work.
On Twitch, it is always more popular to watch Jason Somerville play any random tournament than it is to watch the GPL. For some reason, it's like GPL never seems to be the number one stream during peak.
No, it's going to take time,
peak
right?
Twitch hours.
I also think the cube and using the cube for as many matches as possible and using that format is going to help, and hopefully that's a plan for them.
Yeah, but that's requiring people to be in Vegas, which is not going to work when you're talking about like elite level professional poker players.
No, but there's other places. They can be in Monte Carlo for the the championships or the PokerStars championships. Yep. There's different places in London when they have a tournament there. I mean, Barcelona. There's always a huge turnout there.
Right. But it requires getting all the players to one location, I guess, is the point.
Right.
But yeah. I mean, PCA is kind of a natural one because sort of probably everybody in the GPL will be at the PCA anyway. I mean, that definitely could be one, but it's hard to think of that many. Even the finals at Monte Carlo, like you're going to have a lot of these people that aren't actually in the league that won't participate. But then I guess there's no rule that says like your entire roster has to be there either. So you could just have the matches, do 2 players from each team and still have valid matches.
Yeah. Congrats to Alex Dreyfus. Like I said, it was a rocky road, and all the other folks over at the GPL, Eric Denis and others. Hopefully, season 2 goes as planned, and we have a strong league built out of the Global Poker League. And I wish them nothing but the best. Moving on, in case you missed it, Jose Nacho Barbero fittingly won the final Latin American Poker Tour event this week in Sao Paulo in Brazil. His 3rd Latin American poker title. He beat 328 players to take down the $100,000 first prize. Of course, now the LAPT will dissolve, and they all the stars-backed tournaments around the world become PokerStars festivals and championships. But nobody had more titles than Barbero, and it's awesome that he won the final one. That guy, he's it's funny, like, Brazil with the takeoff in poker, he really has become a big deal in Brazil. He's hanging out with Ronaldo and all the old school Brazilian soccer players. He's one of those. He's a giant star there.
Yeah, super cool. Yeah, I mean, RIP to all the asterisk PPT or PT tournaments that are closing up shop around the world. I saw a lot of people on social media, like the last APPT tournament I think was finished up like 3 days ago, and yeah, I mean a lot of eulogizing the various tours, the LAPT, EPT, and APPT, and so on.
Like a boss.
Yeah, they're all becoming Stars Championships, I guess.
Yep, and festivals, championships and festivals. The championships are the big events. Festivals are the smaller regional type tours. All right, moving on. In case you missed it, speaking of poker tours, a new poker tour was announced this week. This is out of Asia. The Alibaba Sports Group, based in China, announced the formation of the International Poker Tour. I was waiting for the China drop.
China!
There we go. The International Poker Tour with events in Asia, Europe, and North America. I believe the first one's going to be in Shanghai coming up soon. They claim more than $7 million in prize money will be up for grabs. I don't even know what that means. $7 million, is that a guarantee?
Wrong.
Is it, they expect $7 million in prize money?
Wrong.
They expect that many players? I don't know what the claim really means. But the other thing that was interesting that came out of it was these poker tournaments are also going to include chess and bridge tournaments alongside at the same time in the same venue, going to cross-promote the games, which it hasn't been really tried, Terrence. I think it sounds like a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's been tried in some minor ways. I think like the UK IPT had a joint chess and poker, but yeah, not in any sort of grand scale. But yeah, it's all set up for Bill Chen and Jen Jahadi to win. I guess. Yeah, it's interesting. You glossed over this, but you're mentioning Shanghai as a first event, which I think is interesting in itself because, to my knowledge, in mainland China, I guess there was the tournament in Hainan, but to my knowledge, I'd always thought that poker tournaments on China mainland proper were verboten, were illegal. So I mean, obviously, China's like full of just crony capitalism. So if you have the right connections, you can kind of do whatever you want, and if you're a foreigner, you can't. So I guess this is another example of that. Alibaba, obviously, they're like the 5th largest company in the internet company in the world or whatever. So pretty big deal over there. But yeah, I mean, if we start actually having poker tournaments on Chinese soil, that's not just Macau, but places like Shanghai and Beijing. That's kind of a big deal. There's a lot of money in those cities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'll be the new place to grind, so to speak. To go over there and play some.
China will be the new
an emerging market.
New Macau. Shanghai will be the new Macau.
Yeah. Well,
I don't see them like I don't see, because there's no actual casinos there. That's the thing. Like, why do you think Macau is a place? Because China doesn't have any proper casinos. So I don't envision a future where you're going to have like a lot of cash games running over in Shanghai and Beijing and Shenzhen and all these places. Maybe you'll still have to go to Macau for that. But if you start having poker tournaments there with whatever big guarantees and stuff like that, then that's interesting.
Maybe somebody will find Tom.
Tom?
He's in China. He's been missing in China for all these years.
Tom who?
Tom.
Oh, Tom Dwan.
Yeah.
Oh. Tom's in Manila right now playing in the big game. Yeah, well, and you mentioned it, they're verboten the tournaments. They've had tournaments there. From my understanding is you had to win. You couldn't win cash. You had to win prizes like there was an entry fee, and then you win like a toaster oven or a microwave or.
Oh, so you're just going to be able to win like a $300,000 Alibaba gift card,
right? Exactly.
You're gonna end up with like 45 massage chairs being delivered to your house or something like that.
Doesn't sound like a bad deal. I think I'd like that. All right, that's going to wrap it up for In Case You Missed It. Coming back after the break, we're going to talk to Mr. Neil Channing from the UK. This is going to be a fun show. We're Thailand, Canada, UK, all conversing at once. The singularity is not far away. We're doing this thing. So we're going to talk to Neil about all kinds of singularity. What's that?
Talking to Neil about the singularity, because I'm excited about that.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll get his opinion.
Well, that'll be the first question. So, Neil, welcome to the show. what do you think about artificial intelligence in the Singularity?
Yeah.
That'd be a good one. Okay, so yeah, we're going to come back after the break. We're going to talk to him. We've also got Ryan Laplante going to join us later. He is the newest the newest coach over at runitonce.com. We're going to talk about rebuy tournaments and strategies involved in playing in re-entry tournaments that people are entering multiple times in. You're listening to the 2+2 Pokercast presented by runitonce.com. More right after this. SharkScope can now add free money to your bankroll, and all you have to do is be an overachiever. SharkScope.com has a fun tab on every graph that says achievements. They're very attainable goals, like won a tournament of more than $100 or played 100 tournaments in a month. Sounds fun, right? Well, now with our partner PKR, you can earn money for those achievements. Simply play on PKR, turn over the achievement cards, rack up points, and win your share of 2,000 euros. Also, you'll be entered into our 1,500 euro free roll just for getting 5 points. See all the details on sharkscope.com and click on the Achievements Challenge in the menu. And don't forget to opt in to participate and also get in on our weekly $10,000 draw. Sharkscope.com, the best for over 10 years. Track your statistics, avoid the sharks, and find easier tournaments at sharkscope.com.
Hey Pokercast fans, don't forget to follow me, Adam, and Ross on the old social medias. I'm at TChanPoker on Twitter, and once in a while I'll even talk poker if I'm not trying to hit him in the face. If Adam ever gets home from hockey practice, he tweets at Pokercast Adam, and Ross is at Pokercast Ross whenever he's sweating the Chicagos. Hit us up and try to keep it to 140 or less. I mean, fewer.
Hey poker fans, don't forget about the 2plus2.com digital magazine. Each month, a wide array of poker professionals and media write fascinating articles about the game you love. Want to learn about big blind versus small blind hand ranges? How about optimal Jeopardy daily double strategy? Topics like those and many others are covered every month. Head on over to 2plus2.com to see what the magazine has to offer this month.
Welcome back to the 2+2 Pokercast presented by runitonce.com. We're going to be joined by Ryan Laplante here in about 15 minutes, Terrence, but why don't we jump right into the mailbag and get started on that?
Would love to.
And now.
That right there is the mail. Now let's talk about the mail. Can we talk about the mail, please, Mac? I'm dying to talk about the mail with you all day, okay?
Mailbag. Email number
1. Brian writes, hey guys, new to poker and just came across the site and podcast. I know there are lots of threads on this topic in the forums, but I wanted to get your thoughts. Basically, Brian's asking, what are some good titles that a new poker player should read to shape/build a strong foundation in their game? He says he gets a lot of results saying Harrington and Jonathan Little. Also, with any list, there are usually posts about new school versus old school strategy and what works in today's game. Thanks in advance. Wow, you came across the right site. Certainly 2plus2.com has a wealth of poker knowledge that you can go to. Terrence, anything that jumps to your mind right away?
I mean, I think the most important book that there is still probably The Theory of Poker, and it's an older book. I mean, I don't know exactly when it was written, but I want to say like mid-90s.
Sure.
But it's still incredibly important because it teaches you how to think about poker. And it's one of those books where I think you should read it early in your poker career, then start playing some poker and reading other poker books, and then come back and read it, and it'll make a lot more sense because it won't quite make sense the first time, or it might be, like in some ways it's got this weird mix of, well, that's super obvious and I don't understand it. and so both of these things happen sort of at the same time. But once you actually start playing, then you start understanding the theory a lot better. I think Dan Harrington and Jonathan Little are great. I think those are good. Those are great baselines to start. I mean, the thing with new school versus old school is if you're new to poker, it doesn't matter that much. The new school books is just more about the evolution of poker, in that it's tougher to beat sort of high stakes games now if you're using material that's a little bit outdated. But even the outdated information will get you past sort of your local small home game or your local if you play at the local pub night poker, like you're going to be well ahead of the curve by reading any of the good books, whether they're from the 90s, the 2000s, or published in the last 2 months.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think do some poker books date and date themselves? I would say yes, but certain authors won't. And if you go back, and I think the other person I would mention is Ed Miller, who has some great books on playing,
especially for the beginning player. I think
especially for the beginning player, yeah. And those are available as well at 2plus2.com.
You know what strategy doesn't date?
Under the gun, you don't raise. You limp in there.
Adam Schwartz videos from 2005. All right.
Email number 2.
Hey guys. Oh, Terrence is going to do this one.
Nick writes from Antelope, California, which is 4,185,984 Santa Clauses stacked head to toe from Kells.
Wow.
According to the interwebs, Santa is 6'3", 190.5 centimeters tall.
Wow.
Wants to ask our advice on a hand he busted out in his local daily card room tournament. With 30 players left out of 60, and the rebuy period has just ended, 200, 400 blinds with no antes, which boo for that, by the way.
Yeah.
By the time you're playing 200, 400, there should be
Yawn.
antes. I have 13,000 and the villain is 16,000. I have king 10 of diamonds in the cutoff, and it's folded to me. I raise to 1,000. Folded to the big blind, who calls. Pot's 2,200. Flop comes ace of clubs, deuce of clubs, 5 of hearts, so a whiff. Villain checks. I bet 1,200. Villain calls. Pot's 4,600 and 10,000 behind. Turn is the 9 of diamonds. Villain checks. I bet 2,200. Villain calls. Pot is 9,000. I have 8,600. At this point, I put the villain on a small ace. The river is a 2 of diamonds. The villain checks. I ship it, thinking that I can get my opponent to fold a small ace. Villain tanks for about 5 minutes and finally calls. He shows down ace 8, which is the small ace that I was trying to get him to fold. I could reasonably have ace king, ace queen, ace jack, ace 10, ace 9, ace deuce suited, pocket 5s or pocket 9s, and I would shove with all of those for value, with the exception of ace 10 and maybe ace jack, trying to make it look like I missed a busted flush draw. So a couple questions. Should I give up after the villain calls the c-bet? Was it foolish of me to think that I could get the villain to fold an ace with a pot-sized shove on the river? Thanks for the feedback and for the great poker content. I'll lead off on this one.
Okay, go.
I think the thought process isn't bad. So, a lot of times, as you sort of pointed out, the small ace will be inclined to fold. The deuce, the deuce on the river is a blank, which means that it's not a great run out to try to, make an ace fold. There are certainly better river cards that get an ace to fold. The problem is, so I don't mind the thought process. The problem is when you start thinking like, look, there's all of these hands which I'll shove for value, and so, you should be folding just because I go bet. The problem with that is that your ratio of bluffs to value bets is just way out of whack at that point, because there are just they're just you don't have enough value hands, even though it seems like a lot. Yeah, like ace queen, ace king, ace deuce suited, pocket 5s, pocket 9s. Like if you count up all those combinations, they don't reasonably approach any number of, like, if you're just going to bet, because if you're going to shove, if you're going to get triple barrel king 10, presumably you're also tripling king jack, you're also tripling king queen, you're triple barreling
club draw
jack 10. There's all of these air balls, and the universe of missed no pair garbage hands is just so big here that you can't just have your opponent say, well, you should fold because I could have all of these bigger aces and sets.
I'm going to disagree with you. I hate this line by this player.
I hate the line. That was sort of the point I was going to make. I hate the line, but I appreciate the thought process. But yeah, I don't like it at all.
There's nothing wrong with giving when you've raised pre, it comes ace high and you bet and you get called. There's nothing wrong with giving up, because here's the thing: when you do have ace king, ace queen, you're going to get paid off. This guy clearly is not going to fold, and you can comfortably value bet one pair good kicker here on the river because you're going to get called a lot of the time. And when you're playing against players, especially in sort of a home game type local place, you're not going to run up against a ton of sophisticated players. So why are you trying to barrel a guy off, one pair when he didn't come to fold one pair? He didn't come to fold aces ever. So if your thought process is, oh, he's got ace no kicker here, I'm going to make him fold, I think that's wrong all the time.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to note that King 10 is the wrong kind of hand. It does have a little bit of showdown value. You are going to beat the missed flush draws, and then you're going to beat some stuff here, and so you don't expect to win very often. I mean, probably less than 15% of showdowns, I'm guessing. But it does have some showdown value. It makes a lot more sense to bet here when you have, like 6-7 of clubs or something like that.
Email number
3. 3 shall be the number thou shalt count, and the number of the counting shall be 3.
Smitty writes from Antioch, California. I see what you did there, Roscoe. Hey, guys, love the show. Keep up the good work, etc., etc. My weekly cash game has started throwing pot limit Omaha 8 into the mix. We play 1-2-5 to go game. There was a raise to 10, and I called with Jack 9-8-4 Rainbow. It's one of those games where just about everybody sees the flop. In this case, 6 of us to the flop, which comes 10-8-7 with 2 spades. There's a bet of 20, and the next guy pots it to 120. Yeah, I have the nuts.
The most you can bet or raise is a size of a pot.
But with no redraws and no reasonable chance at a low, so I fold. Is this the right play? Is this the reason I shouldn't be playing Jack 9-8-4 Rainbow to begin with? As it turns out, another spade came on the turn, and the board paired in the river, so I was happy I folded. It seemed to me I was probably up against the Jack 9, but had many possible redraws that I didn't have. And I'm 8,076 kilometers from Kells. That's 4,038,000 donkeys. I think, yes, this is so when you're playing pot limit Omaha 8 or better, I understand it's a game where, sorry, I'm going to take a run at this one first, and you tell me if you think you agree. This isn't a game that you want to play Jack 9-8-4 Rainbow in. You don't want to play, especially, this is a fold in pot limit Omaha without 8 or better on this flop, the way this hand goes, I think. I mean, I think this is a pretty quick fold when you have the nuts with no redraw, and there's tons of action and redraws out there. Plus, a lot of the times you're going to be up against a guy with the same hand as you with a redraw. But with 8 or better, it's even worse because, with the 8-7 there, you're only going to win half the pot a bunch of the time because guys will have like nut flush draw with nut low draw, and another guy will have the same hand as you, so you're going to end up trying to get a quarter of the pot kind of thing. But this is the reason why you don't play these hands in pot limit Omaha 8 or better. Terrence, thoughts?
Yeah, this basically can be distilled down to middle cards are terrible in split pot games, right? I mean, which is the general rule. Like all middle cards. I mean, I think probably more even in Omaha than in stud, where you don't want to start 9-10 Jack in stud 8 or better, but it's probably worse than playing like a middle rundown in Omaha.
Well, because if you're playing 8 or better and you have 9-10 Jack, at least if you make a high, there's a decent chance you're going to scoop, right? But if you start with 7, 8, 9, 10 Jack or 7, 8, 9, 10 or something like that in Omaha,
a lot of the cards that make your straight fill the low.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. You don't play Jack 9-8-4 Rainbow suited, double suited in a box with a fox. Do not play Jack 9-8-4. Yeah, do not play Jack 9-8-4 Sam I Am.
No, and even though it's a game that everybody limps in, and it doesn't matter. Throw the hand away. Give action when you have the big hands for these.
Yeah,
games.
you're gonna have Ace King Jack 9. That's a much better hand because you scoop with that hand.
All right, we're going to abandon the email right now. We're going to come back and finish it up. At first, we've got we're lucky enough to be joined by Mr. Ryan Laplante. Fresh off his victory at PLO at the WPT 5 Diamond at the Bellagio. Ryan, welcome back to the show.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on, and I'm very lucky to be on here. I really always do appreciate anytime you guys let me come on, and it's nice to, be able to be back on here after some recent run good for me. Feels pretty great.
Like a boss.
That is some recent run good. The victory in the 1K PLO. Talk to us about that. PLO, your game pretty sharp these days?
Yeah, it's been great. So it's a fairly small field. Only had about 115 entrants. And it actually, so it's really weird. Apparently the structure that they'd posted online was different than what it was supposed to actually be. So because one person complained, and only one person...
Alan Kessler?
he was like... Actually, well, it wasn't Alan. It might have been like his long-lost cousins. Okay, so this guy says that the online structure says that we start with 30,000 in chips. So it's a 1K at Bellagio. They always start with like 12,000. But because the online structure says it starts with 30,000, this guy complains about it supposing to start with 30,000. So of course Bellagio, not wanting to like cause a ruckus and have everyone complain about, what the structure online says is different than what they're doing, they switch it to that structure. But now the same guy who complains doesn't even play in it.
That sounds very Kess. It might be. Yeah, like you said, Kessler's long lost cousin.
It ended up being a great thing for me because I ended up winning it because of this. But it's just like, what? Really?
That's awesome. Congratulations, newest coach over at runatoncE.com. Talk about joining the team over there.
Hello, boys and girls.
Yeah. It's absolutely amazing. I mean, being able to work with Phil Galifon and the rest of the guys at Run It Once. I mean, Run It Once has been the best training site ever since, it came out. It's been number one in every aspect. The amount of values that you get, the types and who coaches on there. Even their lower stakes coaches are all really, really, really good players and put up a lot of really good content. So even their like cheaper plan, I think is the best value plan. Any of my students, when they ask me personally where I would have them go, or even if I'm just posting online about it, I always say that Run It Once is the best, and it's the best for the low stakes stuff. The value that you get in that, and it's also the best value for the high stakes stuff. And for the high stakes stuff, just look at who's been who has coached for them. You've guys like Jason Kuhn and Fedor Holes and Galfon and Ben 86 and like you name it. Some of the best no limit hold'em cash tournament and also PLO cash and tournament players have coached for them. So being able to be a part of that is pretty amazing, and I feel very, very fortunate to be given this opportunity by them.
Yeah, I'd like to do a segment with you one time on the show about using a video training site and the best way to do it. You mentioned some of the higher stake guys, and the first thing that pops in my mind is, a bunch of the people, or a large majority of the people that probably listen to this show and are going to go over there and get training don't need to really be watching Sauce, Galfon, play 100, 200 PLO. Like you said, there's a lot of guys who play down in those limits that a lot of the listeners are playing at that are going to learn. And it's very easy. I mean, I do it myself. I have a Run It Once membership. I'll go there and I'll start watching stuff, and I'll just go, oh, what's Galfon talking about? What's he playing? But is that best for my game? Probably not. And maybe one day we can really kind of go into the best way to approach that.
Yep, definitely.
I think that I think that it can be a bit of a problem if you are trying to learn the basics and you start watching a high stakes video.
Right.
You jump in over your head and you start trying to learn concepts that you need to learn later on.
Well, and you can use you learn concepts that aren't applicable in your games.
Right.
I mean, that seems to me the biggest issue. But the one thing that Ryan, I wanted to talk to you about. First of all, I want to get sort of what's your approach to teaching over there at Run It Once. I know you do a lot of in-person teaching, one-on-one stuff. But what are you going to be doing over there at Run It Once? Obviously MTTs, but is there a certain slant on it that you're going to do?
I mean, I prefer for the most part focusing on hand history review videos. I mean, for video content, it really is by far the easiest to make, which, is better for a coach who has a very limited amount of time that that he can put into something. I mean, even like the video that I did, and this is quote unquote the easiest to make, still took me about 5 hours of work, maybe a little bit more than that, and it was only about 40 minutes. And that's an easy video. Like if I do like an hour-long theory video, it's going to take me between 6 and like 13 hours to make.
Right.
Which, like, that's a lot of work and effort to put into something that you, as a coach, you get paid the same almost no matter what for the most part. So in terms of like ease, because I have a very limited amount of time on my hands, I prefer doing the hand history reviews. But that being said, I will occasionally do theory stuff. It's just expected to mostly be hand history reviews. The other upside about doing hand history reviews is that when I do them, I cover such a broad range of topics. I'm not just yes, theory videos are great because you focus on a topic and you go as in-depth as possible into that one topic, which can be great for certain broad topics. Like, if I end up doing a theory video, it would probably focus on something like big blind defense or playing out of the blinds in general. which can be, that's like a very useful theory video. But even like doing something like that, in order for it to be really, really useful, would probably have to end up being, split into a couple different parts. And it's very difficult to make, and it's very time consuming to make. So while those can be really good for students, as a coach, it's very, very hard to make that stuff. I might end up making one eventually, but for the most part, purely because of time constraints on my end, I'll be focusing on hand history reviews, which hand history reviews are still really good because it covers a ridiculous range of topics. Like when I personally do one-on-one sessions, I always do hand history reviews with very rare theory discussions mixed in. And the reason being is that for a student, a student is going to have leaks across a wide range of topics. And if we focus like, a topic on just 3-bet shoving on 20 big blinds or whatever, yeah, they're going to be able to do that very, very, very well. But, if we focus on that one thing, they're going to have all these leaks that they probably won't even be aware of existing in their hands, in their game. So as a student watching a hand history review, you end up getting the exact same thing. So I discuss my big blind defense range. I discuss, what my 3-bet range looks like versus an early position open from the button, or so on and so forth. Because in the way that I do my hand history reviews, I prefer showing every single hand. Downside of that is that you get some dead space of I'm just open folding in some spots. I speed up through it as much as I can and, try to, skip through it. But it's important for, students to see what my opening ranges look like in certain situations without me having to spend a theory video on it. They can just see, oh, he didn't open 7-4 suited from the hijack in this scenario, but he opened it from the cutoff in this scenario. Oh, what's different about these? And for the most part, when I'm looking at these really close decisions, I'll explain occasionally why I looked at this decision differently than a previous one that might have been very similar. The downside of doing videos in which you skip through to where you VPIP'd, where you entered the pot voluntarily, is that people miss a lot of those close decisions. Right. So they don't even get to see, why you did or didn't do something. So I don't find them as effective. But when I do the hand history review video as in-depth as I do, while occasionally there are some dry points, I make sure that I'm pointing out a lot of these close spots that, might not seem to be as close or might not seem to be very different. But to me, there will be some very clear points that I'll be able to go, oh, this is different because of this, this, and this, or so on and so forth.
And you hit a lot of different concepts for sure.
Yeah, I hit a ton of concepts.
All right, so the one thing I want to talk to you about today, and I thought this would be an interesting discussion, is because I think we have a lot of recreational players listening to our show. And from what I've read online and Twitter, there seems to be, this isn't a new phenomenon, but with these re-entry events, when recreational players go and play in a re-entry event, let's say this weekend's the one that you're playing at here, the 5 Diamond and the WPT event. Unlimited re-entries for a fair amount of time, right?
Yep.
And if you're a recreational player and you've got one bullet and you're going to go there, and Ryan Laplante jumps in and hey, Ryan's at my table. Oh, I busted him, awesome. And then Ryan's at my table again, or Ryan's 2 tables over, and it's this. I understand that. You're buying in each time, you're paying the juice, and I want to look at this from both sides, from the pro side and from the recreational side, and maybe the approach that people can take to this. I think for the recreational player, it's a mindset more than anything, because if recreational players seem to get bitter about the fact that I've got to knock Ryan out 6 times, but not really see both sides of the coin, it's not going to help them in the tournament.
Mm-hmm. So there really are a lot of different perspectives on this. And there are a lot of different pro perspectives on this as well. So I guess we'll approach it from just purely from the recreational standpoint, since enough listeners do fall a little bit into that category. With recreational players, yes, you do run into that issue of you have to bust the same pros over and over and over, but a good number of the people who end up playing re-entry tournaments, even, the recreational players, enjoy that they get to re-enter if they so desire to, especially in a lot of, the Vegas tournaments. There are very few recreational players who play in, the Vegas local series that aren't also willing to re-enter. I mean, that just is like the nature of people who are, playing in these tournaments, is that they all understand that's a re-entry tournament and this is how it goes. Obviously, the downside of it from their perspective is, they have to bust these pros over and over and over again. But the upside from their perspective is that if they bust, they get another shot at it if they so desire. It's not just like if they travel to play a $250K guarantee, $300 buy-in tournament, they don't just get one shot at it. If they can afford to take 5 shots at it themselves, well, then they get 5 shots at it. I mean, yes, I, the professional, also get 5 shots, but that's just like the yin and yang to there being re-entries. From the pros perspective, it's great because, hey, we get to re-enter and, we're going to travel to, like, let's say you're going to travel to South Florida where, traveling down there can be fairly expensive sometimes. You're talking about a couple $100s on flight, which isn't that bad, at least for one way. But then you're also talking about hotel running, minimum $100 a night, maybe even more. So you're looking at spending like, anywhere between $600 to $800 on travel usually. And if you're only able to fire one bullet into a lone 3K, it makes it incredibly hard to justify going down. But by allowing re-entry, it turns, a 3K tournament into possibly a 6K or 9K or 12K, gives you multiple shots at it, and makes the buy-in relative to the travel rate you're paying, a lot more reasonable. And B, it allows these tournaments to have these really huge guarantees. And while as a professional, having more shots, is great for you in that you get all these things, it's downside for the field in that, hey, they have to keep busting you. So while, yes, recreational edges shrink up because pros are firing more and more bullets, most weaker regs edges shrink up as well. It's kind of like a large shrink for everyone except for the absolute best regs. So re-entries technically do hurt everyone's edges, but it also drastically increases prize pools. So as a recreational player, downside is that you technically are spending more money to play in this, in that you have less of an edge. Upside is that you have a much better shot at winning more money because of how much larger the field grows. Like, for instance, if Bellagio 5 Diamond wasn't a re-entry, I would expect the field size probably to be closer to around 350 or 400. Instead, it's the largest $10,000 plus buy-in field ever for World Poker Tour.
Yeah.
792 entrants. So, yes, the downside is that the final 30 of this tournament, for 2 different reasons, because of the insanely, amazingly good structure and because of re-entries, means that the final 30 of this tournament is going to be probably 28 professionals with maybe 2 recreational players, possibly as many as 5 recreational players, but it'll probably average right around 26 to 28 professionals. So downside is that, hey, the end game is going to be really tough because all these pros get all these bullets that they can fire. But the thing is that especially even in a tournament like the Bellagio 10K, which 10K is a lot of money to put up, the majority of the recreational players in that field are re-entering.
That's interesting.
And if you ask most of them what they would prefer, I guarantee you the majority of them would prefer that it was a re-entry.
Yeah, and the other thing is the World Poker Tour probably, they have a vested interest in this because, as you say, 26, 28 of the final 30 are going to be pros, and a lot of these guys are going to make good television for them. They're going to be people that they're going to like to see to make that final table.
Yeah, that's a huge upside for the World Poker Tour as well. Whether or not it's good for the greater economy, you can argue both ways. You can argue that having these larger guarantees, attracting more recreational players is great, because that's what they allow. You turn a tournament into a re-entry, instead of a $500 buy-in tournament only having a 100K guarantee, you can give it a 250K guarantee, and you get a lot more recreational players go, 100K guarantee, I'm not really as interested, but they go, 250K. First place, that's like 50 grand. That's a car. That's a large down payment on a house. That's okay, sure, let's do this. But when it's a 100K guarantee, they don't even really care or think as much about it. So it entices more recreational players and like true recreational players, like very weak players who are just there to kind of gamble and aren't really that strong of players themselves. So having larger guarantees is great for that, but allowing pros to realize their edge more quickly hurts everyone because that dries up a lot of money out of the game when all these pros can fire all these bullets. But the thing is with live poker is because you play so few bullets, you probably aren't really entering the long run anyway. So it's kind of like, I view it overall as being kind of a neutral thing. Neutral because the larger guarantees are great for everyone, but it's bad that pros can, have and realize these large edges in aggregate. Like I personally, playing live tournaments over the course of my life, I will not reach the long run. I know that. It's not going to occur. I can't play enough tournaments for me to reach the long run. So having these tournaments all be re-entry is great for me because it gives me an added chance of getting as close to that as possible. Yes, I am able to take more money out of the economy, but the thing is that especially in all these live series, like let's say there's a tournament series at the Win. The Win will have, a bunch of these guarantees that if it wasn't for allowing re-entries, they just wouldn't exist. These guarantees wouldn't exist. On a 250K guarantee, they probably would only run like a 50K guarantee or 100K guarantee, and it would have a lot less recreational players and a lot more professionals. That would be bad for everyone. Yes, when they do allow re-entries, there are a lot more pros who end up running deep in them, but they're able to have these much larger guarantees. And while I'm firing bullet after bullet, over the course of the series, I probably averaged maybe firing anywhere between 15 and 30 bullets, which that's a lot of extra money that these tournaments get to see as guarantees. And lifetime, over the last 5 years that I've been 21 plus and able to play these things, I've fired hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bullets. At the Win, I've probably fired 100 to 200 bullets lifetime, and my best finish there is a fifth. And, obviously that's variance, but like that's the thing with these live tournaments, at least, is that these re-entries, while yes, they allow pros in aggregate to play more, and while yes, that can technically take more money out of prize pools and be bad, the thing is that with live, you're just never even going to come close to the long run by yourself. And honestly, even in aggregate, like the thing is just that it's just not many. You just aren't able to get a large enough sample size. So the thing is that these large guarantees are much better for everyone. And the thing is that at least I've noticed past few years that allowing these more re-entries, it really has made the fields better, with more recreational players being willing to come and play these things because they see these huge prize pools and these huge guarantees. I mean, look at how South Florida is still doing. I mean, yes, they have those couple of big overlays and stuff, but live poker down in South Florida is live and kicking. Even in Vegas with all these series and all these reentries and stuff, all these tournaments end up doing really, really, really well. So yes, there are downsides. Downsides are that pros can take more money out, and downsides in that you have to bust these pros over and over. But the thing is that the majority of the players, at least the recreational players that I've noticed that play in these fields, enjoy that they can re-enter. There are very few who play in these things who just do the one-off satellites and play the one-off satellite, and especially in the 400s and 600s. But even in like the 1600 mains at like the Win and other properties, and even in this 10K, like this 10K at Bellagio, if you asked every recreational player in the field whether or not they like it as a reentry or not, I guarantee you the ones that bought in directly, 90% of them will say they like it as a reentry. If you ask the ones who satellite in, yeah, 90% of those guys are going to prefer that it's not. Because when they satellite in, they want the absolute best bang for their buck. Now, that being said, if you ask me about a series like, something huge like the World Series, because it is over such a long stretch and because there are so many tournaments there, I strongly, strongly, strongly prefer almost every event being a single entry. But if it was like if it was like a 3-day series or a week-long series or just a 10-day series or something like that, and it didn't have the prestige and everything attached to it, then yeah, I don't care if it's reentry or not. In fact, I'd prefer it not reentry. But when you're talking about 7 weeks of tournaments and you're talking about these really large buy-ins and these buy-ins that are supposed to have a lot of prestige attached to them, I'd much strongly prefer them to stay single entry.
You bring up an interesting point, which is like the thought about the recreational players who buy in, that they would prefer re-entry because they've already made the trip, or that they were really excited to play the tournament or what have you, versus the satellite players. It would actually be interesting to test your hypothesis in polling. I just don't know how you would do that. How do you walk up to all the amateurs and just sort of say, well, you look like you suck at poker, so let me ask your opinion on this. But the sort of thought with what you said a few minutes ago about your ability to get into the long run, so to speak, or the longer run, I guess, is, I mean, the devil's advocate argument that I would make is that pros don't really, you don't sort of have this right to get to the long run. Like, right. Yes, for your career that it's viable, yes, but part of the fact that makes someone a professional poker player is that they have to be able to deal with the ups or downs, just the sort of recognition that, yeah, okay, I'm getting it in good, but there's no guarantees, and I could have a losing day, week, month, year, and that's the reality of being a professional poker player. I'm not entitled to a long run to be able to fire 5 bullets into a 10K or what have you. And when you are talking about these larger buy-in tournaments, then you are talking about taking money out of the prize pool, and potentially, again, I don't even know to what extent like the recreational player's experience is diminished by having to knock people out of tournaments over and over. It could be insignificant, but but it's just, I wanted to get your take on that sort of thought, that it helps me as a professional and all the other professionals get in the long run. The counter argument to that is sort of like, well, I don't care if the professionals get in the long run. I just want my experience to be good.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, I think you can argue, like, I think this is a topic that you can pretty well argue both sides of the coin, like, which is why I was trying to bring up both points. I think that, yes, the pros being able to fire more bullets will take more money out, and yes, that can, to some degree, cause a worse experience for recreational players. But the thing is that I don't think it does. I really don't, and I think that the huge majority of recreational players prefer being able to have the tournaments be re-entry. I think there are exceptions to that, and I think the exceptions are things like, certain World Series events, and also players who satellite in. Obviously, someone who satellites in would much strongly prefer the field to be a single entry, because if pros can only fire 1 bullet, that gives them a much better shot of playing versus weaker players themselves and giving them a better shot at winning, there being a smaller field. But, with reentry, I really do think that if you ask most recreational players what they prefer, that they would prefer there being reentries. Obviously, the downside is that if every tournament is, and these tournaments are much harder, that can be bad for the total aggregate poker economy. And I do think that the places do need to be fairly careful with it. Like, for instance, I'm not entirely a huge fan of all the 10Ks being unlimited reentry. Like, I'd prefer events, especially like for WPT mains and stuff, I prefer them to either be single entry or single reentry for the most part. There are exceptions to that, but like LAPC is one of my favorite tournaments of the year, and it's a single entry. Bay 101, which is an uber popular tournament, I believe that might be a single re-entry, or you get like 1 entry per day. Like, for tournaments that are like really big and prestigious, if they have multiple starting days, I like there being 1 bullet each day. But this is just like for me personally. As far as like arguing whether it's good or bad for poker, short term or long term, I think you can argue that for longer term, it's probably in an aggregate bad for the game. But whether or not we'll necessarily see that even over as short of a period as 5 to 10 years, I have no idea, honestly. And I personally prefer certain tournaments being re-entry and certain tournaments not. Like for the World Series events, like if every single 1K, 1500, 3K, and 5K was a reentry, I would honestly dislike it. And if they made the main event a reentry, I would honestly dislike it. But that's because it has like a special place in my heart, and it's something that I care very deeply about its prestige and its history, staying alive in the way in which it's set up. So that being said, as far as as a player, when it comes to what decisions I should be making about reentries, when I decide to play a tournament that's a reentry tournament, I view each bullet fired in the tournament as a brand new tournament. And I view it from that point and looking at and analyzing my edge. For instance, if I enter into a tournament that has 15,000 starting stack, 1,500 to start, I enter in at first and I bust at like 2,400. And I can re-enter and get 35 big blinds. My second bullet is going to be an entirely different tournament than that first one. I view it as a completely unique event. Now I'm looking at a tournament in which I register at 2,400. My edge in that moment is going to be much different than my edge in the field at the start of that first bullet. A decent portion of your edge, especially in more difficult tournaments, but in tournaments in general, comes from playing the early stages and having these really deep stacks and being able to run really large win rates. So when I'm late registering a tournament, I have to be very aware that my edge in it is much, much, much smaller. If at the start of the tournament, I might have, depending on the structure and all these different factors, let's say at the start of the tournament, I had like an 80% ROI. At 2,400, if I register 35 big blinds, I'm probably going to as low as like a 20% ROI or a 25% ROI. So now I need to decide, is my edge relative to this buy-in, relative to my bankroll and all these other factors, being as small as it now is it worth taking it? I don't care about how many bullets I've fired previously. It doesn't matter if that 2,400 bullet, doesn't matter if it's my first bullet or my 50th bullet in that tournament. All that matters is that what's the prize pool, what's the structure, what's my edge on this exact bullet, and should I re-enter?
We've only got a couple minutes left, Ryan, but I wanted to get your take on this one thing that I do hear from recreational players, and that is when I play in a re-entry event, players play differently. You see them blasting, shoving all in, doing taking crazy lines, playing high variance because they can fire, and that's what people don't enjoy. I wanted to come and play poker against thinking players. Obviously we can talk about why that's not always a great idea, but this high variance line of play is something that some recreational players don't like.
Yeah, I can see why they would dislike that. My argument for the other side of the coin is that when people are willing to gamble in these manners, in these tournaments, it helps their edge out a lot.
It helps their edge, and this is a common thing that you hear, and I agree with you 100%, right. But it doesn't help their experience. They don't enjoy it as much as when everybody's playing, normal poker, in quotes, that they would say. So
then for players who specifically dislike that, well, then it depends on, just that person specifically. They should just, in general, try to avoid tournaments that allow unlimited reentry. If the tournament allows only one reentry, then they're going to see a lot less of that. So then they should just enter tournaments that only allow one reentry, or only play the tournaments that don't have reentries at all. And that definitely is a point that's worth noting for, tournament directors who might be listening, is that while re-entries can be a really good thing, the total economy and most series need to be very careful with how they use them and where they put them into place and why, because you will find that there will be players who sites and casinos, when they're running these tournament series, they need to be very careful with who they're advertising to. Their player pool is going to be a mixture of keeping the professionals happy and regs happy and the grinders happy, and also keeping their recreational pools happy. If they happen to be a specific site or series that have a lot of recreational players who get in on satellites and who don't like there being re-entries, and it's a very local series, then they need to make sure that they're listening to their customer base. If their customer base is saying, hey, we dislike this, then yeah, they shouldn't do it. And also, like, especially bigger series like the WPT, the World Series, and other large series need to also be very careful with this, making sure that while they do allow reentries to keep certain people happy, that they don't allow it to such a degree that it causes, people to get upset with how many bullets can be fired, or people to get upset in the manner in which it causes people to play. I think that that the poker economy in general is this very thin line of balancing act in a lot of different things with structures and rake and whether reentries are allowed or not and game types offered and so on and so forth, and that each place needs to make sure that they're finding that right balance between everything. And I think there honestly are different things that they can be doing to make sure that they do that too. Just make sure that they're actually just listening to their personal player base. And when they do that, they end up having much greater result, especially if they're willing to think beyond their next board meeting and beyond their next quarter. If they're willing to think in terms of, what's good for us a year down the road or 2 years down the road, they're going to see that they're much more successful than if they just think the very short term.
Indeed. Excellent advice. Thanks, Ryan. Really appreciate it. Congratulations on becoming one of the newest coaches over at runitonce.com. Going to be looking for your videos when I'm over there watching the streams, and we'd love to have you back another time and talk about the different stuff that comes up in the poker world. Thanks so much, Ryan. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. I had a lot of fun as always, and I can't wait for the next time.
That was cool. Thanks so much again. T, why don't we wrap up the segment there, come back, finish up the mailbag. We got a couple of hands, some 140 or less as well. You're listening to the 2+2 Pokercast presented by runitonce.com. More right after this.
What's up, guys? If you're serious about online poker tournament statistics, you got to check out sharkscope.com. They've been the leader in online poker tournament tracking for over 10 years. If you've ever had the experience of being in an online tournament and being worried that your opponent might be a dangerous shark, sharkscope.com will tell you. And your first 5 searches every day are free. If you log in with your Facebook account, they'll double that to 10 searches. So get on over to sharkscope.com, track your stats, and improve your win rate today. Hey, T-Chan here. Now that you've been listening to me and Adam give you the latest news in the poker world, it's time for you to give your 2 cents. So come hang out with the rest of the Pokercast Nation on the forums at pokercast.2plus2.com. There you can leave feedback about the show, give the world your hot takes on this week's stories, or just leave Roscoe your best sports betting advice. He needs the help. That's the forums at pokercast.2plus2.com. The best part? It's available no matter how many miles you are from Kells.
Okay, people. Most of the kittens have perished. There are a few left you can save, though, and here's how to do it. Get involved with the Pokercast by emailing your questions, suggestions for the show, or even record a sound clip. Adam will be using the best ones on the air. Well, let's face it, probably the worst ones as well. I can see you there at your computer. Send an email right now. Totally disagree with one of Adam's takes last week? Send an email. Love last week's interview? Email. Want to know how much cash Adam has on him right now? Email. Pokercast at 2plus2.com is the address. Ship the funny to Adam today.
Welcome back to the 2+2 Pokercast presented by runitonce.com. Let's jump right back into the email bag with number 4.
Is it number 3 or 4?
4.
Email number
004.
Maybe you just wanted to hear that one. All right, I guess, 3, because we played the
Indeed.
Monty Python.
Tease up.
So Ross loses the job audition for Ring Card Girl in a boxing or MMA match because I believe the primary qualification is that you have to have the ability to count 2, 3 sequentially, but sometimes in title fights past.
My kiss blowing technique probably isn't up to par either.
I have this image in my head, T. Thank you so much.
There's a few reasons that Ross can qualify, but the one that I didn't expect was the lack of ability.
I like how they always thank the Ring Card Girl. Every single time. They're like, thanks, Amanda.
You looking down on Amanda?
We've got Amanda and Tiffany, and there's 7 ring card girls here for a 13-card fight.
That's a Mike Goldbergism. So anyway, email 4. Scott says, I'm at my local Kohl's department store, I guess, and they're trying to sell gag gift boxes. I guess it's to get a reaction of the recipient when they take the wrapping off. Anyway, this was one, and it's a link to bacon-scented dryer sheets. Scott goes on and says, How is that not already a thing? And it seems like inventing this is a path to millionaire status. Enjoying the Pokercast as always. Also enjoy All In or Knocked Out. Well, Scott, I enjoy you enjoying it. Keep up the great work. Adam, do you think there's any chance that as a stocking stuffer you could get bacon-scented dryer sheets for your vegetarian daughter?
No, she would be absolutely appalled if her clothes smelled like bacon. But my son, on the other hand, would be in heaven. Literal heaven. He's bacon baby, like the drop Ross just played. No question. How is that not a thing? That should be a thing. I want those in my stockings. I mean, that would be fantastic. That bacon smelling.
Yeah,
clothes.
we'll post the PO box address on the forum this week where you can send us gifts.
Exactly. It would drive my dog nuts. He'd be just following me around the house all the day.
Yeah, I'll send you back a potato gram.
Yeah.
Email number.
It's number 5.
Alex here from Massachusetts. What happened with Zynga Poker? All the talk about their huge database of players getting bought out. Their stock's at $2.86 right now, but it seems like a dying company. No buzz. Thanks for the great show. Go fuck yourself. Go Bruins. He's a Bruins fan that hates the Canucks.
That's necessary.
Yeah. This whole talk about... And this has happened several times. It first happened when PokerStars and the other online poker sites started the .net sites and thought, okay, we can't advertise real money sites in certain areas of the globe. We're going to open up these .net sites and advertise to people to sign up and play free poker. We're going to give you some chips, and we're going to convert these people, even though we're not advertising. We're just
going to hope they type in .com.
Well, we're going to hope they're going to type in .com, but we're also going to hope they condition. So they sign up at .net, play, and then realize that there's a for money site and switch over and get an account at pokerstars.com. But the problem is it isn't this same group of people who are attracted to both things. And I think the sites overestimated the ability for them to convert these .net players over to the .com site, or the Zynga players who play Farmville and all the different games that are involved in the same company as Zynga. We'll turn these people into real money poker players. Well, it's not that easy. People aren't just, it's a group of people that go to play Zynga poker because it's free. That's why they go play it. They're not, there's this percentage of people that are going to switch to real money poker is much smaller than people think, in my opinion. T, what do you think?
Oh, absolutely. And this was something that I thought, at the time, I remember there was buzz about this, like you say, 2, 3, 4 years ago, thinking there's all these people playing Zynga poker, just like the way there's these people playing Farmville and the watermelon slicing game, whatever that one was called.
Fruit Ninja.
All this. Yes, thank you. All of these sort of things, and it says it's a natural conversion. But yeah, they play social players play in social ways. They do weird things like pay real money to buy 18 zillion chips, and it doesn't look like real poker. On top of that, I did a little bit of digging when this question is, because it's sort of thought, well, yeah, we haven't heard anything about Zynga poker in at least a couple of years now, and apparently Zynga, they alienated their client base in a way by introducing features that they didn't like. So Zynga poker's revenue is substantially down, and a lot of those players that were playing Zynga poker actually converted to the casino side of things, which is obviously not which is not a good thing for Zynga poker, but probably not a terrible thing for Zynga in general. And also, a lot of the people who play social games are probably more drawn to casino games than they are necessarily poker. So
they went the PokerStars route with play money.
A little bit, yeah, in sort of a mini micro way, yeah.
Email number.
It's number 5.
It's number 5 again?
Oh.
Wow.
Email number
6.
Andy from Indianapolis writes, still really far from... Oh, wait, this is T's.
Yeah, that's okay.
Sorry.
It's all right. I'll go. Andy from Indianapolis writes, still really far from Kells, but I must admit last time I wrote, I quickly Googled Kells Canada, saw that there was a Kells British Columbia, and measured in chip racks from there. I'm not going through the pain of possibly messing it up twice, just know I'm really far away from Kells.
By the way, there's a Port Kells probably 5 miles from where you and I are sitting right now.
What?
Yeah.
That's Port Kells. That's where that's how you get to Kells.
That's the one way.
Andy wants to know how do chronic tankers reconcile the fact that strong players have an edge with deeper stacks, and by excessively tanking, they're inherently lowering the average stack depth for themselves throughout the tournament by playing substantially fewer hands per level. And to take a lighthearted jab at Will, shamelessly stolen from Antonio versus Robo on High Stakes Poker. If I had Will Kassouf's brain, I'd take that long to make decisions too. I'll answer that question. It's a fantastic question. It's one that's really quite frustrating and vexing because they are aware of it. I mean, these high stakes players are very smart, and they are aware that they're tanking and they're balancing. They just the thought process is basically, yes, in general, it would be greater if I get more hands per hour, but I don't want these hands per hour to come at the cost of my specific decision right here and right now and my own balancing of my own tanking range. And if you've heard me, unless this is your first time listening to the show, you know that this drives me up the wall, and that, excessive tankers and people who need to balance every decision should be lined up on a wall and shot.
Like a boss.
So, I mean, it's not that they don't know. They know, they just don't care, and they don't think it's as much of...
I wouldn't say they don't care. What I would say is they feel that the edge they're getting from tanking, balancing, splash is bigger than the edge that they would get from playing fast. I think that's what I think.
That's the best way of putting it. Very succinct way of putting it.
He continues,
Andy wants to ask, what is Mike up to these days? Love the current crew, but began listening when it was the Adam and Mike show and was just curious. Thoughts and prayers to you and your wife, Adam. Do you have an MJ update for us?
Sure, I got an MJ update. He, as many people know, and we mentioned earlier in the show, he has a successful business that takes up quite a bit of his time. And he's building his dream house right now. It's almost complete. Well, to be more accurate, it's his wife's dream house. Let's face it.
It always is.
Yeah. No, he's doing awesome. His two girls are growing up, and he's spending a lot of time with them. That was the big problem with Mike with the show was it took up a lot of his time, as far as taking him away from spending time with his newly born daughters, and because he's got a business that he focuses on, probably works 60 hours a week at. He wanted to have enough time in the week to spend the time with the girls. So,
this is a guy who should just quit everything and move to a farm.
Like the Terrence route, go buy a big.
He's not sitting pretty off that PokerStars score
of the
$50 tournament.
The $50 tournament. He's a driven guy. He's just sort of one of those A-type personalities. I don't think Mike could ever just stop and retire. I honestly don't think he could. He's just
and he loves big city life too much.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that he moves to the suburbs, he still goes to Vancouver. He still wants to go to all the hip new restaurants and see all the bands that are in town.
Yeah.
He loves the big city too much.
See if I can get this one right.
Email number
7.
Rob Wood writes, which incidentally is my porn name. I don't know if you knew that. He's who's next on 2+2. Adam, Terrence, and Ross. Since the recent poker puzzle on what cards you would select in a new variant of poker to ensure a win was so well received, you asked listeners to send in other poker puzzles that you may want to use in an upcoming Pokercast episode. Here's a poker puzzle that you may have come across. I find it interesting and requires a fair amount of cleverness to solve. Heads up hold'em hand. After the turn is dealt, player A is ahead, meaning that if the variant only dealt 4 board cards, player A would be awarded the pot. However, no matter what card comes on the river, player A cannot win the pot. He may tie or lose, but he cannot win the whole pot. What's player A's hand, player B's hand, and the 4 board cards dealt so far? I'm not smart enough to do this, so T, you're up.
I don't know the answer to this, and I didn't think about it. I didn't see this email before. I'm almost certain that player B's hand, or player A, the guy who
currently has the best hand,
who has the best hand but is drawing dead, has pocket deuces, because the answer in these things is always pocket deuces.
Really?
Because pocket deuces always is because it's the best hand, but it has to be counterfeited, right? I'm pretty sure that the other two things I don't know. It's some sort of mega draw with overcards where every card that obviously by definition of the question, every card that can come counterfeits the deuces in some way.
I don't know the answer, and I haven't thought about it or figured it out, but I'm going to say non-pocket deuce hand.
Really?
Yeah. And anyways, if you're...
It will have a deuce in it, though. It might be like 3 use or something
Okay.
like that. It's going to be one of those.
Jump into the show thread this week at the Pokercast forum at 2+2. Throw your answer into the thread, and hopefully Who's Next will jump in and grade our answers.
Email number.
0800.
Gavin writes from Avondale, Arizona. Not sure on the Kel's distance. Come on, there's calculators.
Wow, try. Come on, man.
Gavin writes that he's a recreational 2-3 no-limit player, and a few of my friends have been lucky enough to play the Monster Stack event at the World Series the last few years. His buddy finished 291st last year. It was a blast to be part of the money bubble. I consider myself a field player, but I'm interested in learning about the math side of the game. I've listened to you guys for a few years now and haven't missed an episode. You guys are great for the game, and I enjoy the format. Here's the question. Is it possible for you guys to teach a math concept during each episode? Just one concept per show, and start off with the most basic of basics and gradually advance. I know this would seem basic for most listeners, and I think quite a few of us could learn from it. It might even be a good refresher for some of your more advanced listeners. Appreciate the help. Keep up the good work.
This is an excellent suggestion, Gavin. I think
especially because of our new sponsors over at runones.com.
Right.
I'm sure there are many people who, we should definitely get some of the beginner coaches on. We've had the end boss, Mr. Galfond, on there, and we've also had some really, really smart folks out there, and like Ryan was saying about an hour ago or half an hour ago, that a lot of the beginner coaches are fantastic over on One. So we should definitely grab a couple of those guys and talk about a very
math concept. Any math concept?
I'll say we do talk mathematically a lot in the show when we do the hand history analysis and the Ross reports, especially like a simple math concept. I'll just throw one out this week.
Let's do it.
Always figure out combinatorically how many hands you can beat and how many hands you can't. So we go back to the first email earlier in the show where the board was this was the email that was from Nick, and the board was ace deuce 5 9 deuce. Let's suppose you're his opponent in this hand, and you've got something like ace 10. Figure out mathematically how many different ace jacks there are: ace queens, ace kings, ace deuces, pocket fives, pocket nines, and pocket deuces. And pocket aces. But those are all the combinations. Just count how many there are. You have to remember there are different combinations of both, right? So if there are 2 deuces on the board, there's only one combination of pocket deuces because the other 2 deuces are on the board. But there are 3 combinations of pocket fives because there's 1 5 on the board. But there's many different combinations of, say, king jack because there's no king jack on the board, and there's 16. So if you're struggling with that, post in the forum and people will help you out. But the most important math, I think, or one of the most important math concepts is how many combinations of hole cards and hold'em can somebody have given a specific board.
When you're right 52% of the time, you're wrong 48% of the time.
That's a good one. All right. Well, Mackinnon, our friend Daniel, sent in a couple of emails this week. One of them was 40 uses for bacon fat, which...
Is one of them dryer sheets?
No. There's a lot of bacon-related emails.
It should be. Apparently dryer sheets is one of them.
It was, yeah. One of them was bacon-infused soap, which I thought was...
Better. That sounds reasonable.
Directly right on your skin.
Bagel.
Bagel.
All right, let's get into 140 or less.
140 characters. That's it. I love hashtags. I love all of them.
Terrence Chan
needs more than 140 characters to express himself.
140 or less.
All right, T, do you want to kick things off?
At Ankush Mandavia writes, please update me on your day 1 Bellagio stack if you haven't already, especially if you are on 1 bullet. Thanks.
I think that's sarcastic. I'm not sure. But
I added that one, actually.
I think Ankush is being a little sarcastic there.
There was a lot of Bellagio updates on Twitter.
And he's right. Like, day 1 of a unlimited re-entry, do you really want to hear... what everybody's doing with every bullet? It kind of gets old. I'm with him on that one.
Collector's updates started with 30,000. Have 30,025.
Level 3. I'll be back later. Yeah, it's painful. Kate Hall, at Kate Hall, making a big fold face up as pure ego move, and as such, I find it almost impossible to resist. What's the saying about the third time? Oh yes, third time's expensive. I don't get that.
She's making a joke. I guess she's on her third bullet of the Bellagio Poker Classic, or whatever. So she's saying that instead of third time's a charm, third time's expensive.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
All right. You can't read your own tweet, Ross, so I'll read it for you. At Pokercast Ross, the only reason I went outside today was to throw snowballs at a tractor. Was there? So it snowed in Vancouver. It's -2 or something.
Yeah.
And what about a tractor made you go out and throw snowballs at it? Because you're not worried that the guy's going to jump out of the tractor and find you?
Somebody told me they like this tweet and I should explain it on the show. So here it is. I was inside all of yesterday for various reasons.
Keeping warm.
And I was like, wow, I haven't been outside all day. And I saw they were doing construction at Vancouver City Hall, which is right by my house.
Yeah.
And I walked outside and I loaded up some snowballs and
fired
them at the Caterpillar across the street until I was satisfied, and then I went back inside. That was the only thing. That's the only time I left my house yesterday.
Yeah. Good reason.
I don't know. Am I living the dream, or am I?
I think so.
Were you the type of kid who threw snowballs at cars when you were a kid?
I was. I did it all
depends
the time.
who's.
Yeah, I did it too, but I eventually grew out of it. I eventually realized it was a dangerous thing to do.
Yeah.
I grew out of it when a guy chased me down. He wanted to kill me. It was me and my buddy, and we were at the top of this hill.
I got chased down once too. Yeah.
And we were firing them it's no fun when you're just firing soft,
right?
Like fluffy snowballs at cars, and they just kind of go poof when they hit it. You wanted to make it as icy as possible. You spit in it.
It's
you
loud.
Water. You
wanted to scare them while they're driving.
And you want to hit the door because it makes the most noise, like it's this big. So of course we get like 4 or 5, and we're just nail this guy's car. He slams the brakes on, jumps out of the car. He's probably 20, 30 yards away from us, and we're like, I don't know, 10 or 11, and we take off running, and we go down the hill as fast as we can because that's the easiest point of getting out of the way. But what we don't realize is that it's 6-foot-high prickle bushes the whole way down. And I end up in the middle of like 10 yards deep into prickle bushes, screaming in pain, trying to keep quiet so the guy doesn't know where I am. Not that he's going to come into the prickle bushes anymore. He's smart. But then I had to get out. Yeah, no, it was.
I got chased once too, and so I was not far from home, so I bolted and made it home. And the guy's chasing me, and he's actually like on the property of my house.
Oh my!
I bolt into the downstairs suite because I know the downstairs suite is usually unlocked, and I go, and it's also where my grandparents live. So I run in.
Hey, Grandma.
I run in. Yeah, exactly. I run in. Hey, Grandma. I'm acting all cool, like even though I'm totally out of breath and I'm running in. The guy continues to tease me. He knocks on the door.
Grandma, don't answer that.
My 70 some odd year old grandma who does not speak word one of English answers the door and like just sees this like irate dude, and he's trying to like gesture and communicate with my grandma. Like my grandma's just playing dumb. Like she knows I've done something shitty because
this
why
guy's
else
irate.
would this happen? And so she's just like no English, close the door in his face, and then like gives me a pretty solid yelling at. He was like, I don't know what you did, but
I didn't do
know
it.
why this guy is here. I'm like, no, I didn't do anything.
Crazy.
This guy's just a psycho.
I would. There was a big line of cars that would come off of the
ferry.
The ferry, yeah. So there was a big cliff overlooking that line, and we would fire them down on those cars.
Make it rain.
It was a good spot. I don't think they would have been able to catch us. It was far away.
That's the definition of a good spot.
I don't think anybody in any of our Arizona listeners are going to be able to relate to that.
No, this isn't a thing. I used to ski behind cars. Did you ever do that, T?
Oh, I'm not that dumb.
Oh yeah, we get our buddies who were like 16 and had their driver's license. We'd hook up like water skiing, except this is through the streets with snow on them and ski. Yeah, it's fun.
You ever pull the e-brake for fun and make the back wheel spin? Did that one too?
Oh God, I got to be a pro at power slides. We call them power
drifting.
Slides. Yeah,
drifting around in the snow.
No, I'm good at those.
Yeah.
At Squid Poker nomenclature 101. High roller equals 2K event. High roller equals 10K plus event.
The first high roller is in scare quotes.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
Jamie Kerstetter, always a great one. She tweeted, "Waste 7 hours. Check. Max reg, late turnies, and frantically sink break the shower. check. Yeah, I mean, we've all been there before, and this just like encapsulates the online poker life. If you've never taken a shower during the synchronized PokerStars break, then yeah, I don't know.
High speed shower.
High speed shower. It's
out.
especially impressive, I think, because and I'm going to get the sexist ban on this because Jamie's a female. They take longer in the shower, so the fact that she does it is almost more impressive.
But they don't have anything. See, I don't buy that. They don't have anything extra to do in the shower.
Their hair takes longer
do.
to dry.
Why do they spend 40 minutes in there if they have nothing nothing extra?
Because, I mean, if you have long hair, it's harder to. You got to spend time shampooing.
They don't wash
your
their hair every single time.
That's
though.
true.
Yeah, they don't wash. They also don't shave their legs every time and so on. I know. Really,
what's that?
You don't know how many women do you know that take 3-minute showers?
None, but I don't know many men that take 3-minute showers either.
I've never showered during the sink break in a tournament. I mean, I usually time it so you're like, if you're under the gun, that's a good place to be. You fold your hand. I go like if I've.
No, you want to time out.
On Sundays, it would be because on the West Coast you have to wake up. Like the Sunday Million and things start a little bit earlier, and so I would register the tournaments the night before or win a satellite. So I'd get up immediately as the tournament was starting. I would hop in the tournament, and then as the first sink break was coming up, I would fold and run and start the coffee pot, take a dump or whatever, grab my coffee,
TMI,
and then get back into the tournament.
There you go.
GTO.
GTO Live.
There's some GTO involved.
At Jason Kuhn.
We could do a whole show on like shit people have done during the synchronized 5-minute PokerStars. We should just actually I'm going to do this. I'm going to throw out a tweet sometime this week and just read off the
people can post in the thread. We'll
what did
read
you
those.
say? One thing that happened this week: Lex Veldhuis folded aces on the button.
That's right.
Because he had to take a piss
on a live Twitch stream. What was that all about?
Had to take a piss. He had to go to the bathroom. Gone.
No,
at Jason Kuhn, taking an Uber back to the hotel yesterday. Driver says he really has to go. Proceeds to pull out a cup and piss in it without missing a beat. Speaking of dumb shit that you do,
I guess Jason Kuhn's not the first
teacup.
I thought poker players were allowed to.
That's what I was gonna say. Like if
you're supportive,
his
this
Uber
guy's
driver
lucky.
was a professional poker player, clearly at some point.
Well, the Uber driver's lucky that he did it in front of a group of people who are used to it.
Yeah. A guy who actually understands. That's probably a 1-star in a lot of other contexts.
Speaking of Twitter, Danielle Anderson, I don't know if you follow her, T. Of course, I think you probably do. She had a pretty interesting week. She was out for dinner in Washington, I guess, and she was sitting next to Trump and Romney's little get-together dinner. Tweeted a couple of pictures from her table she was right next to them, which was kind of funny.
Wrong.
And then you saw on the news that, of course, Trump and Romney got together and were made nice or something. And then on her way home...
You mean they had a photo where Romney looked like a little bitch?
Kind of. And then she jumps on the plane to go home, and she's sitting next to Mike Tyson.
Yeah, I saw the selfie of her and Tyson.
What?
And,
that's pretty funny.
That's pretty amazing to sit next to Tyson on the plane. How many selfies do you think Mike Tyson has?
It's a daily occurrence.
Bunner and I have one with him.
It's not.
Oh yeah,
daily,
you do.
It's hourly.
Hourly. Everywhere he goes.
It's
Mike Tyson is like super famous. I think he's famous in literally everywhere in the world.
He really is.
Yeah.
Probably Conor McGregor-ish. Who's
Conor
more
McGregor's
famous?
Definitely not as famous as Mike Tyson.
As Mike Tyson?
Yeah, not even close.
Is there any...
Maybe one day when he gets a face tattoo.
Any UFC fighter that's as famous as Mike Tyson?
No. Not even Dana White. Dana White's probably the most famous person in the UFC, and he's not.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Good.
If you watch Tom Segura's stand-up on Netflix, I think it's called Mostly Stories. There's a very, very funny Mike Tyson story in there.
The best. I love Tom Segura. He's funny. We were efforting to get a hold of Mr. Neil Channing, but he slept in, the poor guy. I think he had like 4 hours sleep. He was going to get up at some ridiculous hour over in London, but we let the guy sleep in. We're going to hopefully get him on next week. So let's end it there. Thanks so much to Ryan Laplante from Run It Once for joining us, talking to us a little bit about re-entry events. Terrence for joining us in the middle of nowhere in Thailand, and Ross for coming out to the suburbs. Appreciate it, and to you for listening each week. Thanks so much. Come on over to the thread over at 2plus2.com, the Pokercast forum, and Pokercast at 2plus2.com for your emails, suggestions for the mailbag. Love to hear from you. Have a good week. We'll talk to you soon.
Adam, Before we put a bow on this one,
yeah.
I've got a late entry for 140. I'm sorry, I know we were ending the
is it
show,
good?
but it's worth it.
It better be good.
Wins 140 or less this week. Just came across my feed. Shannon Shore, of course, at Shannon Shore. Mattisau busts a dude who promptly re-enters and draws our table again. Mike introduces himself and asks where he recognizes him from.
I'm assuming this is not ironic.
No.
It's Mattisau.
That's great.
So sorry, I never try to prolong the show more than it needs, but I thought that was worth it.
Oh, it's okay.
Squeeze that one
Hopefully
in.
people did that thing. That always happens to me when I'm listening to a podcast where they try and end the show, and then I look down, there's 5 more minutes, and I'm like, they must say something else here.
They must
I'll
continue.
keep listening.
All right, that will wrap it up. We will talk to you soon.